Hello, my name is Daniel Carter. I'm 38 years old. I'm a project manager, a husband, and a father to an 8-year-old girl who deserved better than what my family gave her that day. I didn't think much about it at first. It was supposed to be a normal family gathering. My parents invited everyone over for the holidays. My sister was already there when we arrived, her kids running around the living room like they owned the place, laughing, opening snacks before dinner, making noise that somehow nobody minded. My daughter, Emma, held my hand as we walked in. She always does that in new or crowded situations, not because she's shy, but because she notices things. She feels things, and I've always tried to protect that about her. We brought gifts, thoughtful ones, things Emma helped pick for her cousins. She spent time on it. She cared. That's who she is. Dinner went fine. Conversations, jokes, the usual stories repeated for the 100th time. My parents laughed more at my sister's kids. They always did. I noticed it, but I ignored it. You learn to ignore things when they happen slowly over time. Then came the gifts. Boxes started appearing from under the tree. Big ones, carefully wrapped. My sister's kids went first. One got a gaming console, the other a brand new tablet. My parents watched them open everything with excitement, recording it, clapping, smiling like it was the best moment of their year. Emma sat next to me, quietly, watching, not saying anything, just waiting for her turn. Then my mom handed her a small bag. Not a box, a bag. I remember the sound of the paper when Emma opened it. Light, cheap, almost empty. Inside was a coloring book, a simple one, the kind you find near the checkout line at a grocery store. I saw the price sticker still on it. $9.99. Emma looked at it, then at me, and she smiled. Not a real smile, the kind of smile kids give when they don't want to make things uncomfortable. "Thank you," she said softly. Nobody noticed. Nobody said anything. My parents were already back to talking about the other gifts. My sister was busy helping her kids set up their new devices. The room moved on like nothing had happened. But I didn't. Because in that moment, something became very clear to me. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the gifts. It was about what it meant. $3,000 spent on one side of the family, and $10 on mine, on my daughter. I felt something rise in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Something quieter. Something that doesn't explode, but waits. Emma sat there, flipping through the coloring book, like it was enough. Like she was enough. And that's when I realized something I should have seen years ago. This wasn't new. It was just the first time. I refused to ignore it. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't argue. I didn't confront anyone. Because I understood something in that moment. If I reacted, I would lose. But if I stayed quiet, I could finally see everything. And once you see everything, you can change everything. I didn't say anything on the drive home. Emma sat in the back seat, quietly flipping through that coloring book like it was something special. Like it mattered. Like it was enough. And that was the part that hurt the most. Not the gift. Not the money. But the way she tried to make it okay. Kids don't complain when they feel less valued. They adjust. They shrink. They convince themselves that maybe this is just how it's supposed to be. I watched her through the rearview mirror, every few seconds, making sure she was okay. But deep down, I knew she wasn't. When we got home, she walked straight to her room. No excitement. No, can we play with it? No energy. Just quiet. That same quiet I felt growing inside me. My wife looked at me. She knew. She always knows when something's off. That wasn't right, she said. And for the first time that night, I didn't brush it off. I didn't say it's nothing. I didn't defend my family because it wasn't nothing. It was a pattern. And I was finally ready to see it. I sat down at the kitchen table, just sat there, thinking, replaying everything, not just tonight, years, birthdays, holidays, little moments that didn't seem important at the time. But now they all connected, the smaller gifts, the shorter conversations, the way Emma was always slightly outside the center, not ignored, not completely, but never fully seen. And once you notice something like that, you can't unsee it. My wife sat across from me. "Are you going to say something?" she asked. I shook my head. Not yet. Because saying something means you're reacting. And reacting means you're playing their game. I didn't want to react. I wanted to understand. I wanted to be sure. Because if I was wrong, I would be the one who broke everything. But if I was right, then everything was already broken. And that's when I made a decision. Not out loud, not dramatic, just quietly. The kind of decision that doesn't need witnesses. I was going to pay attention to everything, not just the big moments, the small ones, the ones people think don't matter, because those are the ones that tell the truth. The next morning, I called my sister. Nothing serious, just a normal conversation. Casual, easy. I asked about the kids, about the gifts, about how excited they were. And she told me everything, in detail. The planning, the shopping, the weeks they spent picking the perfect presents, the effort, the care. And then I asked one simple question. What about Emma's gift? There was a pause, a small one, but enough. Oh, Mom just grabbed something quick, she said. Just grabbed something quick. Like it didn't matter. Like she didn't matter. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there for a moment. Because now, I wasn't guessing anymore. Now I knew. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't oversight. This was choice. And that changes everything. I didn't feel angry, not yet, because anger is loud, and loud people lose control. What I felt was clarity. Cold, sharp, precise. The kind of clarity that doesn't push you to react, but to plan. And in that moment, I understood something very important. They thought this would pass. They thought I would ignore it. Like I always had. Like I always did. But this time, I wasn't going to let it go. Not for me. For her. For my daughter. Because she was watching. Watching how I react. Watching what I allow. Watching what I accept. And I wasn't going to teach her that this is what love looks like. So I stayed quiet. But this time, it wasn't weakness. It was the beginning. The next few days were strangely normal. That's the thing about family disappointment. It doesn't always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it just sits there quietly, at the edge of your day, waiting for a moment when you're tired enough to finally admit what it is. Emma didn't mention Christmas again. Not once. She put the coloring book on her little bookshelf beside 2 library books and a half-finished puzzle. And that was somehow worse than if she'd cried. Because kids don't always ask the question out loud. Sometimes they just absorb the answer. And I couldn't stop thinking about what that answer had been. You are not as important. That sentence never gets spoken in families like mine. It gets delivered through little things, through effort, through attention, through who gets remembered and who gets handled. And once I saw it clearly, I started noticing everything. My mom posting photos online of my sister's kids opening their expensive gifts, with captions about making magical memories. No mention of Emma. My dad texting me a blurry photo of my nephew using the gaming console with a "worth every penny" message underneath. Worth every penny. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I looked over at Emma, sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing a butterfly, in silence. And something in me settled. Not anger, not revenge exactly. Resolve, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that changes your behavior, one decision at a time. So I stopped doing what I had always done. I stopped filling the silence for them, stopped making the drive every other Sunday, stopped being the one who remembered birthdays first, stopped sending group messages to keep everyone connected, stopped making it easy for them to feel like good people while giving us the leftovers. And at first, nobody noticed. That told me more than anything else could have. If your absence doesn't create a disturbance, you were never really part of the structure. You were just maintenance, background support. The person who kept the lights on while everyone else got to feel important. A week later, my mom called. "Hey, we haven't seen you guys," she said in that light, almost offended tone people use when they're used to your availability. I told her we'd been busy. She asked if Emma liked her gift. I looked at the kitchen wall while she said it. Just stared at the same little crack in the paint I'd been meaning to fix for months. Then I said, "She was polite." There was a pause, not a guilty one, a confused one, like she genuinely didn't understand what I meant. And that was the moment I realized something else. People don't always know when they're cruel. Some people are just lazy in their love. They put all their energy where it's easiest, where it gets them the biggest reaction, where it makes them feel most needed. And they call that fairness because they don't want to look too closely. But I was done helping them avoid that mirror. That night, after Emma went to bed, I opened my laptop. Not to write an angry message, not to call anyone out, just to start collecting something. Examples, dates, patterns, moments I had dismissed for years. The time my parents forgot Emma's dance recital, but drove 2 hours for my niece's soccer game. The birthday where my nephew got a bike and Emma got a craft kit from the dollar aisle. The family vacation where my sister's kids each got their own room and Emma slept on an air mattress in the laundry room. I had laughed things off for years, because that's what people like me do. We make things comfortable. We smooth edges. We call it peace, when really it's just delayed pain. But now I had a daughter watching me, and I couldn't let her learn that love means quietly accepting less. So I kept writing, line after line, memory after memory. And with every sentence, something became clearer. This wasn't about one toy. It never was. It was about what had been happening right in front of me for years. And the more I wrote, the less invisible it became. That's when I knew this wasn't going to end with a conversation. Not the kind they were expecting anyway. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to keep the family comfortable. I was trying to tell the truth. And once you decide to do that, everything changes. I didn't send the message that night, or the next. I let it sit. That was important. Because when you've spent most of your life swallowing things, the first truth that comes out of you is usually too sharp, too emotional, too easy for people to dismiss as overreacting. and I wasn't going to give them that. If I was going to say something, it had to be clean, calm, undeniable. So I waited. And in the waiting, I got angrier. Not explosive angry. Worse. The kind of anger that becomes organized. The kind that starts opening old photo albums and realizing your child is in the corner of every memory instead of the center. The kind that remembers exactly who got celebrated and who got tolerated. A few days later, my mom sent a message in the family group chat. Sunday lunch at our place. Bring everyone. We miss our babies. Our babies. Plural. Funny how language works when love doesn't. I stared at that message for a full minute before typing back, "We won't make it." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Everything okay? That's the thing about people who benefit from your silence. The second you stop performing normal, they suddenly become curious. I didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, I did something I had never done before. I asked Emma a question. Not a leading one. Not dramatic. Just honest. We were sitting at the kitchen counter, and she was drawing little flowers in the corner of her math homework, the way she always does when she's thinking. I said, "Hey, sweetheart, can I ask you something?" She nodded. I said, "Do you ever feel like Grandma and Grandpa love your cousins more than you?" And the way her pencil stopped moving, I will never forget that for the rest of my life. She didn't cry. She didn't even look surprised. She just got very still. Then she said, very softly, "A little. A little." That was the word she gave me to carry. And then, because children will always break your heart in the simplest possible way, she added, "It's okay. I know Aunt Melissa sees them more." I had to look away. Because what she had done in that moment was something no 8-year-old should ever have to do. She had already built a story to make their neglect feel reasonable. She had already learned to make herself smaller, so other people wouldn't have to feel guilty. And that was the exact moment my hesitation died. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted the lie to stop. That night, after Emma went to bed, I wrote the email. Not a rant, not a meltdown, just the truth. I addressed it to my parents, copied my sister. No insults, no name-calling, just facts. I told them exactly what happened. I told them what Emma received. I told them what her cousins received. I told them I had spent years minimizing a pattern that was no longer ignorable. I told them I had asked my daughter a question no child should ever be able to answer. And I included her answer. A little. Then I wrote the sentence that changed everything. If your love for my daughter is conditional, performative, or based on convenience, then you will not have access to her until you learn how to love her correctly. I read it 5 times, took out every extra word, made it colder, cleaner. Then I hit send. No dramatic music, no shaking hands, just a click. And then silence for 12 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. Then my phone lit up. Mom calling. Declined. Dad calling. Declined. Melissa declined. Then the text started. "You're twisting this. You're being ridiculous. It was just a toy. You know how expensive things are right now. Emma loves art stuff. You're making this into something it's not." That one almost made me laugh, because that's exactly what people say when you finally describe something exactly as it is. You're making it into something. No. I was naming what it had always been. And once something has a name, it gets harder to pretend it isn't there. I didn't answer any of them that night. I just sat there in the glow of my phone, reading every excuse like a receipt. Because if there was one thing I understood now, it was this. people will fight harder to protect the version of themselves they like than to repair the damage they actually caused. And for the first time in my life, I was done helping them do that. The next morning, I woke up to 23 unread messages. 23. That's how many words it takes for a family to panic when the person who usually keeps things smooth finally stops cooperating. I made coffee before reading any of them. That felt important. Small, maybe. Petty, even. But after years of reacting on everyone else's schedule, there was something deeply satisfying about stirring cream into my mug, while my entire family sat in the discomfort of being seen clearly for the first time. My mom's messages came first. Long. Emotional. The kind of texts designed to make you feel cruel for naming what they'd done. She said she couldn't believe I would weaponize Christmas. She said she was heartbroken that I would accuse her of favoritism. She said Emma knows she's loved. That sentence sat in my chest like a stone, because if a child has to wonder whether she's loved, then no, she does not know. My dad's messages were shorter, more practical, which somehow made them worse. He asked if I really thought one misunderstanding was worth tearing the family apart. That's another thing families like mine do. They call truth a disruption and silence loyalty. They act like the problem began the moment you said it out loud. Not when it happened. Not when the child noticed. Not when the damage was done. Only when you refused to keep pretending. Melissa, my sister, was the most direct. She sent exactly one message. You've always had a chip on your shoulder about me and the kids. Don't drag Emma into your issues. I read that twice, then a third time. And I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was perfect. There it was. The entire family system in one sentence. You're not responding to what happened. You're just jealous. That's how people protect themselves when accountability threatens their comfort. They rewrite your pain as envy. They turn your boundaries into bitterness. They call your dignity drama because it's easier than admitting they benefited from your silence. So I didn't answer with emotion. I answered with a photo. Just one. The coloring book. Price sticker still on it. Nothing else. No caption. No explanation. Just proof. The family group chat went silent for almost an hour after that. Then Melissa left the chat. That told me everything I needed to know. My mom finally responded. We were going to get Emma more later. That one made my hands go cold. Not because I believed it, but because of how familiar it sounded. The promise of later is the favorite language of people who didn't bother when it mattered. Later birthday dinner, later apology, later visit, later effort. Later is where accountability goes to die. So I typed back, children experience love in real time. Then I muted the conversation. That afternoon, my mom showed up at our house unannounced, holding a giant dollhouse, still in the store box, still with the receipt tucked under the handle. It looked expensive, too expensive. And that's how I knew it wasn't about Emma. It was about optics, about being able to tell herself and everyone else that she fixed it. She stood on my porch with wet eyes and that wounded mother expression she'd perfected over decades. I just want to make this right, she said. Emma was upstairs. Thank God. Because I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't soften. I didn't smile. I didn't rescue the moment. I looked at the dollhouse, then at her, and I said, if you need a receipt to remember my daughter matters, take it back. She blinked like I'd slapped her. Not because I'd been cruel, because I'd been clear. There's a difference, and people who rely on your politeness hate learning it. She started crying. Real tears, probably. I'm not saying she didn't feel hurt. I'm saying her hurt wasn't the center of the story anymore. And that was new for her. She asked if she could at least see Emma. I said no. Not until this is about her and not about you feeling better. Then I picked up the dollhouse, placed it back in her trunk, and closed it for her. Gently. That part matters. Because revenge, the good kind, isn't loud. It's controlled. It's refusing to let people buy their way back into a child's heart after they showed her what she was worth to them when nobody was watching. My mother stood there for a second like she genuinely didn't know who I was. And maybe she didn't. Because the version of me she raised would have let her in. This one didn't. And as she drove away, one thought settled into me with absolute certainty. For the first time in my life, they were going to have to feel it. For a while after that, things went quiet. Not peaceful. Quiet. There's a difference. Peace feels earned. This felt like the moment after a fire alarm stops ringing, when your ears are still buzzing and everyone's pretending the danger has passed, even though the room still smells like smoke. My parents didn't come by again. Not right away. Melissa didn't text. The family group chat stayed silent except for a few random messages from my dad about the weather, as if that was a bridge back to normal. It wasn't, because normal was the problem, and I had no interest in rebuilding it. A week later, my Aunt Pauline called. She's my mom's older sister, the kind of woman who never speaks first in a room full of louder people, which means when she does speak, it usually matters. She said, "I read the email." That was it. No dramatic sigh, no accusation, just a fact. Then she said something I didn't know I needed to hear. "I'm sorry we all let that become normal. We all. Not your mother, not your sister. We all." I sat down when she said that, because accountability sounds different when it's real. It doesn't rush to defend itself. It doesn't start with "but." It doesn't try to drag your pain into a debate. It just tells the truth and stands still. Pauline asked if she could send Emma something. I almost said no out of reflex, because by then I was exhausted from watching adults confuse gifts with repair. But then she added, not to fix it, just because I should have shown up sooner. And somehow, that changed everything. A few days later, a small package arrived. Inside was not some giant, guilt-soaked apology present. It was a watercolor set, 12 colors, 2 brushes, nice paper, and a handwritten note. "Dear Emma, your drawings deserve better paper than a grocery store coloring book. I hope you make something wild and beautiful. Love, Aunt Pauline." Emma read it twice, then looked up at me and smiled the kind of smile children give when they feel seen in a way they didn't expect. And I nearly lost it right there in the kitchen. Because that was the whole thing. It was never about the money. Not really. It was about effort, attention, proof. Proof that someone had looked at my daughter closely enough to know who she actually was. That same evening, I made another decision. The final one. I sent one last message to my parents. Short. No anger. No invitation to argue. I wrote, "Until Emma is old enough to decide for herself, I will not keep placing her in spaces where she has to wonder whether she matters. You do not get access to her just because you share DNA. Love is behavior, and from now on I will believe yours exactly as you show it." Then I blocked the thread. Not forever, maybe. but indefinitely. And yes, that was my revenge, not screaming, not humiliation, not some dramatic holiday meltdown. My revenge was final because it was simple. They lost access to me, to my home, to my daughter's small, beautiful life. They lost front row seats to her school plays and Saturday pancakes and messy watercolor masterpieces and the way she still reads with her lips moving when she's tired. They lost all of it. Not because I took something from them, because they showed me over and over again that they did not know how to hold it with care. People think revenge has to look sharp to be satisfying. But sometimes the deepest consequence is just this. You don't get to keep someone after teaching them they were easy to overlook. The next Christmas, we stayed home. Just us. A cheap little tree in the corner of the living room. Cinnamon rolls from a can. Pajamas all day. Emma painting gift tags at the kitchen table with her new watercolor set, tongue sticking out in concentration. At one point, she looked up and said, "This is my favorite Christmas." And there it was. That was the payoff. Not their regret, not their silence, not the guilt they were probably still trying to reframe into some version where I was the difficult one. This. My daughter feeling safe enough to say that out loud. I'm Daniel Carter. I'm 38 years old. I'm a project manager, a husband, and a father who finally learned that protecting your child sometimes means disappointing the people who taught you to tolerate being disappointed. And if you're listening to this while thinking about your own family, your own small thing that wasn't actually small, let me tell you something I wish I'd understood years ago. Children don't remember your explanations. They remember how people made them feel. And they remember whether you noticed. Emma will not remember the price of that toy forever. But she will remember that I saw it, that I named it, that I did not ask her to keep pretending. And sometimes that is the real inheritance